Welcome to Derek, which is the Hebrew word for way, and this is our weekly Psalmcast, meditating on the way as we walk through the Psalms together. Today, our Psalm is number 27, and my name is John Mark Hicks.
My name is Bobby Valentine. I want to welcome you to our Psalmcast where we do meditate on the way that the Lord has laid out for us in the book of Psalms that calls us to a certain way of being, a certain way of discipleship before Him and before the world. And today in our psalm is a beautiful one talking about desiring the presence of God in our lives. And we hope that you will be blessed.
Yeah, Bobby, as we read through this psalm in a moment, it's important to note what almost everybody notes that this is really a psalm of two sections. The
Yes.
first six verses are an expression of confidence in God, and then the last verses 7 to 12, particularly, but all the way to 14, is a petition for God to do something about the
Yeah.
sort of thing that the psalmist is desiring and wants from God. So there's a confession and then petition, but overall, it's kind of we would classify it more like a psalm of confidence. This is an
Yeah.
expression of confidence. And with
Yeah.
that confidence, the psalmist turns to the Lord and says, okay, you are who I want, and I'm going to
Exactly.
wait on you.
Yeah. It's a very powerful statement of Israelite faith. You use the word confidence, and this person in Israel, as they put this in the Psalter and use it in their liturgy, this tells us a lot about how ancient Israel thought about who God is and their relationship with God, and they certainly have an unbelievable amount of faith in this great God that we call Yahweh. It's a beautiful psalm. It's a good one.
So let's go ahead and read it and pay attention to the first half, which is the confession of faith, and then the second half, which is filled with petitions that the
Right.
psalmist is seeking or yearning for something, asking God for something. So Bobby is our official lector. So Psalm 27.
Psalm 27 of David. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When evildoers assail me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and foes, they shall stumble and fall. Though an army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war rise up against me, yet I will be confident. One thing I asked of the Lord that I will seek after, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. For he will hide me in his shelter. In a day of trouble, he will conceal me under the cover of his tent. He will set me high on a rock. Now my head is lifted up above my enemies all around me, and I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing and make melody to the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry aloud. Be gracious to me and answer me. Come, my heart says, seek his face. Your face, Lord, do I seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger. You who have been my help, do not cast me off. Do not forsake me, O God of my salvation. If my father and my mother forsake me, the Lord will take me up. Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me on a level path because of my enemies. Do not give me up to the will of my adversaries, for false witnesses have risen against me, and they are breathing out violence. I believe that I shall see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. The word of the Lord.
Thank you, Bobby. And I have a, a really good friend who, a woman who, when she was about 13 years old, 12, 13, her parents divorced, and she was about to make a turn in her life to head down a path of potential dealings with drugs and other things. It was going to be a nasty turn, kind of in response to the breakup of the family and the sense of abandonment and divorced kids who experience that sort of thing really struggle, of course. And she was on her bed one night and she just decided, okay, God, I'm going to open this Bible and you tell me something. And she just flipped her Bible open. The sort of thing we usually tell people not to do, right?
Yeah.
But she just flipped it open and it came to Psalm 27.
Wow.
And 27 is that where you just read, though my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will
Wow.
never forsake me.
Yeah.
Whom shall I fear? The Lord is
That's
my
right.
light. It's not my parents
Yeah.
that are my light. It's not my
Exactly.
parents that are my salvation. And this was the turning point in her life. She encountered
Wow.
God in this moment in the Psalms, and she gave up the drugs and gave up the cigarettes and gave up that kind of pursuit and turned her attention towards seeking the face of God. And so this psalm was a transformative encounter for her. When she read this, she encountered God, and it moved her to submit to the teaching.
Yeah.
As the
To
psalm
the
itself
way.
prays,
Yeah.
teach
Yeah.
me your
Yeah.
and make teach me your way, teach me your direct, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I want to follow your path.
Wow.
So I found this psalm quite impactful, and it speaks to the heart of where a lot of
Yeah.
people live. A lot of people live with fear.
Yes, they do.
They're afraid of what the government's going to do. They're afraid of, what's out on the street. They're afraid of what's in their heart. They're afraid in so many ways. And we live in this constant state of fear. And this psalm of confidence and psalm of trust and faith
Yeah.
speaks to that fear.
Yeah, and it does so with the knowledge that there's things to be afraid of in the world. I mean,
Yes,
this
I do
this
have enemies, right?
psalm,
There are
yeah,
adversaries
there's
out there.
enemies,
Yeah,
and it lets us know that those enemies are probably like false witnesses, adversaries. It calls them. They're not good people
they're going
who
to end
are
up in
seeking
violent
our harm.
ways, right? They're going to
Yeah,
pursue us in
yeah.
violence. Yeah.
So it's not some naive confidence, but the confidence is in who Yahweh is, and is like, okay, yeah, uh, show me yourself, I'll seek your face. And that statement there in what is it, verse where my father and mother won't, they may leave me, but you never will. That is
Right.
one of the
Verse 10.
most
Yeah.
prominent or extravagant statements of faith.
Mm.
I mean, those are the kind of things, if across the world, whatever your religious background is or no religious background, you think that the one thing that can be stable in your life is that dad will never turn his back on you, mom will never turn their back on you. But the psalmist is knows that there's least that can happen. But if that does, Yahweh will take me in.
Mm.
Yahweh will watch over me. In other places in the Psalms, Yahweh is the father of the orphans, and stuff like that. And here, suddenly, if that happens, that's what I become. I become an orphan. I become somebody without a family, a social net, a frightening situation in ancient Israel, especially.
Mm.
But here you got that statement of confidence, and that it is. That's a proclamation of unbelievable faith. Um, in this God. He is my light. He is my
Right.
salvation. Who shall I fear? And it says that twice, fear or afraid. Uh, who am I going to, I see the enemies. See the dragons. I see Leviathan around in whatever form that the dragon takes. But here I know where I
Hmm.
will be safe. And I think
Right.
that's a good that's a good feeling. That is just a good feeling.
Yeah, I think you're right about that fear, and there's a real fear. I mean, in verse
It
3,
is a real fear.
evildoers assail me. I mean, that's not that's not some little thing. When
That's
people
right.
are against us, when evil is against us, when the adversaries and the foes are against us, in verse 2, or an army in verse 3, or there's a
Yeah.
war in verse 3, right? So we're talking about the world falling apart, basically,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
maybe even in my own personal life, it's falling apart. Just
Hmm.
like this child in a family that's divorcing, her world is falling apart.
Yeah.
And yet, though the army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. So, three
That's right.
times we are said, or three times it is said, fear is not going to control my life.
That's right.
Fear is not going to
Mhm.
be how I live my life. I'm
That's
not
right.
going to live it out of this trepidation, this dread, this, oh no, when's the next shoe going to drop? And I'm not going to live out of that kind of worry and anxiety. I'm going to confess the Lord is my light and my
That's
salvation.
right.
The Lord is
Yeah,
my refuge. I don't
exactly.
have anything to be afraid of. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, and that third use of fear, in verse 3, it's got the opposite of that. The antithesis of fear is I will be confident. I
Hmm.
will be, um, you know,
I'll trust.
bold.
I'm going to trust.
I'm
Yeah. Rely on.
I'm
Yeah.
going to, this is not going to be the path. And I do think that the pathway is functioning in the background here. Where am I going to go? Which direction am I going to be on? Well, the path that I'm going to choose and that I have chosen is the one that Yahweh is going to lead me on. He's going to put me on a
Mhm.
level path. He's going to put me on a way, as Psalm 1, echoing that. And actually, the way Psalm 26 ends, the person, wants to be in the presence of the Lord, and the my foot stands on a level ground, in the great congregation and all that kind of jazz at the end of Psalm 26. So it kind of leads us into there that God is going to take care of me because um, he's put me on this road that he's already done the bulldozing work on, and
Yeah.
it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And
So though I'm
it's a
surrounded by these fears, right? The army
exactly,
that encamps around me, maybe
yeah,
even that army can be envisioned in a lot of ways in terms of
it can,
person
it
and
can,
nation and demonic. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to envision what that army is against us.
exactly,
And yet, in
yeah,
the midst of that, we have in verse 4, the one thing. Here's the one
that's
thing I
right,
want. You know,
that's right,
I mean, when we're living in that kind of fear, the one thing we want is we want some security. We want
yeah,
some stability. We
yeah.
need some confidence. And what are we going to find? Where are we going to find that confidence? What are we going to trust in? What
Exactly.
will
Yeah,
dispel the fear? And so, verse 4 goes right to the heart of that, doesn't it, Bobby?
exactly. Exactly. Verse 4 does, because even though it doesn't use the word that I'm about to say, this is what it's all about, is Emmanuel.
Mm.
I'm going to go to the temple. I'm going to seek God. I'm going to seek not just any God, there's lots of gods, but I'm going to seek Yahweh. That is the covenant God of Israel. I'm going to seek him. That's what I want. And I want to live in the house. I want to live in the tent. I want to live in the palace that we're it's where I want to be. I want to be in the household of God, and I want to see his delightfulness. I want to see his glory. I want to see his beauty, as the New RSV translates that, and that's where I want to be. This
Mm.
I want to be. This is Emmanuel, even though again the word is not used, and that's going to come out later on in verse 8 about seeking the face of God, where you are in the presence of God. That's the safety. If I am where God is and God is where I'm at, all is well. There is nothing that can touch me because I am in God's presence. It's the space, when God is near, the enemies cannot get near me because God fills that space. And
Mm.
so here, this I think again, this is probably my favorite verse in the entire. I love all the Psalms, but this is probably my favorite verse right here, because here this person shows us what is really. He could have said this in a lot of different ways, but what the person wants to do is just be with God. It's he could have said, "Make me safe," could have, I mean, and that's what's going to happen. But the one thing that is going to make life bearable, not only bearable, but as we're going to go through it, joyful. I'm going to shout for joy. I'm going to have sacrifices of joy, is 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 Yahweh. Yahweh is going to make everything okay.
Mm.
That's where I need to be. That's where I need to be. I don't fear. I'm confident not because of me, but because of what Yahweh does. I want to dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. Which again, if those of us who've just been reading through the Psalter, that kind of echoes Psalm 23, which is just not very far away. I want to dwell in
Right,
the house of the Lord
right,
forever.
right.
In the He's going to prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. I'm going to eat and drink with him. What a wonderful, marvelous idea here. And again,
Yeah.
those
So it goes,
sacrifice.
yeah, it
Go
goes
ahead.
to what is the singular thing? What is the
Yes.
root? What is the root of living life without fear? And the root of it is to seek the Lord, to
Yeah.
to
It's
to behold the beauty of the Lord, to
yeah.
experience the presence of God. So
The
as you were pointing
presence.
out, there's several words here for temple. It's temple or palace. It's the house of the Lord. It's the tent of the Lord. And
Yeah.
that's tabernacle language. Tent,
It is.
temple is kind of the building language. But the
Yeah.
point is not the edifice. The point is the one who dwells there. God
That's right.
dwells there, and that's where the face of God is seen. And so the
Yeah.
psalmist wants to live or sit, literally sit.
Yeah.
You can translate live as well, but sit in the house of the Lord. I want to be in the presence of God. I want to be able to ask my questions. I want to be able to seek. I want to be able to experience the stability and the graciousness and the beauty of God. And when I'm sitting in the beauty of God and I'm experiencing the presence of God, then I have this kind of trust and confidence and response that you mentioned, the shouts of joy here. But that's the one thing
That's right.
that will dispel fear, is to be in the presence
Yeah.
of the Lord.
Yeah. It is. It's the presence of God, God with us, Emmanuel,
Right,
God with
exactly.
us. And the presence of God is such a powerful theme. We were having a brief conversation 133 times, this notion. The word face shows up there in verse 8, 133 times in the Psalter. And of course, it's all over the Hebrew Bible.
Mm,
This notion of being in the presence of God or the face of God, this again, being in that presence, suddenly you have the warrior God on my side who is taking care of me. He's my protector, as it's
mm.
going to say in the very next verse.
Yeah, I'll go
It's
into
not
verse
anything.
5.
He's going to say that he will hide me. You know, I'm not going to hide. It's man. Just imagine, a kid they're playing hide and seek, and you want to go find somebody and they go hide. But here the hider is not me. The hider is Yahweh. Yahweh, I have such intimate access to this God that sometimes we think is so distant to the Israelites for whatever reason. But this Israelite believes they can go to the temple, go to the tabernacle, and get into the presence of God, and that Yahweh will hide them. But hide them where? Inside the tent, inside the temple, inside the presence of the Lord.
In God's
This
house,
is
right?
in God's house.
Yeah, yeah.
That Yahweh is going to hide me, and those
Mm,
enemies will never find me. Those enemies can never touch me because of the presence of God.
yeah.
God's own presence is the protector,
Yeah, and
and
one of the metaphors that's used for that here is to hide me high on a rock or to set me
High on
on
a
a
rock.
rock or
That's right.
but there's a stability there, right? You're going to hide
There
me on a
is.
rock. It's not like I'm going to be hiding in a swamp and sinking or quicksand or something like that.
That's right.
It's going to hide me on it's going to hide me in his shelter, conceal me under his tent and set me on a rock so
That's
that
right.
high with God.
That's right.
So no one
Yep.
can ever, someone's going to get to me. Right?
That's right.
Yeah, that kind of
And
stability.
then, in fact, yeah, because and the psalmist is well aware of that spatial dynamic here because I'm high on the rock, and then it says I'm going to be above the enemies, and
Verse
my head is
6.
lifted up above them. They can't touch me. They can't reach me.
Yeah.
So you have this. The one thing that I'm seeking is the presence of the Lord, and that again that takes care of all the sources of evil, the trouble that has arisen in my life.
hmm
And because now I have what I didn't have, which was safety. I have communion. I have fellowship.
Yeah.
In fact, I have all my needs. Everything I need is through this God.
Right.
Yahweh is all I need. It's all I need.
Right.
So I
Well,
think
and
that
we see something of the response there. I will offer sacrifices and with shouts of joy. In other words, you want me to be afraid. Well, what should I be afraid of? I'm here in the presence of God. Like, I don't have anything to be
absolutely,
afraid of. I'm going
that's
to
right.
offer these sacrifices, and as we know, those sacrifices probably are something like a Thanksgiving sacrifice or a free will offering or a vow offering or something that they're going to eat. All right.
They're gonna
So
eat.
this is going to be a worship celebration. So we're going to shout with joy. We're not going to cower in fear because we've been set on a rock. We are in God's house. We're under God's protection. And so we will sing and play our instruments in celebration of who God is and the
Yeah.
joy of being in the presence of God.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's for the Israelite who has lived in the story, and they don't have Bibles that they're carrying around, little Torahs, but they know the story through the liturgy of Israel. And and I grew up not knowing this story. I literally I remember the first time I ever read the story of Moses and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu, not in Leviticus, but Nadab and Abihu and the 70 elders of Israel. Uh, Eating and drinking with God on
Exodus
Mount Sinai.
24. Yeah.
Exodus 24, verses 9 through 11. And I was so stunned, I was like, what? This cannot be in the Bible. I actually remember being an Old Testament survey and pointing it out to the teacher, and he didn't know about it because he argued with me. And I remember then I pointed, I was like, this is what it says. They saw the God of Israel, they ate and drank, and I was like, okay, well, that's never left me. But when the Israelite they sit down and they eat and drink in the presence of God. It's that kind of story that's functioning in the background. This is the covenant that I have with God.
hmm
I'm seeing God, and God did not raise his hand against Moses and those with him in that little hall up on the mountain. God protected them. This is what it's all about, the intimacy that we have. And that's why I'm going to sing. And Paul in Ephesians 5, he quotes this very phrase right here in Ephesians 5:19.
Sing and make
I will
melody.
sing and
Yeah.
make melody to the Lord. Even has our little word solo in the Greek there, right there. So here that's what I'm going to do. Paul, talking to his little group of Gentiles in Ephesians and saying, you want to discern the will of the Lord, walk a different way. Uh, you know, you're a temple too. That's what he calls them in the book of Ephesians. You're a temple. Now, what do? We sing and we make melody because God is with us. That's what he says in Ephesians 2, that we've been built into
hmm
a house of God where we have access to Christ and God through the Holy Spirit who dwells among y'all. So
hmm
that's what we do.
Yeah.
We lift up this worship and praise and eat and drink and sing and make melody. We solo to the Lord,
Yeah. Giving thanks.
and
Yeah.
it's awesome. I
Exactly.
mean, this is
Exactly.
just the
The
entire
when the
image
church
here.
gathers, when the people of God gather and we sing and we make melody, um, we're doing exactly what Israel did, right?
We are
And we're
doing
doing it in the
exactly what
presence
Israel
of
did.
God, just as Israel. So that's kind
Absolutely.
of one of the things, whom shall I fear? One of the things we might even say here, Bobby, and it's been true in my life, is that when I'm living in that moment of fear and I'm not sure what's going to happen, and I have this great anxiety. This may not be true for many people, but it's true for Israel. It's true for this psalmist, and it's true for me. I go to church. I go to be with the people of God, and I go to worship God. I go to praise God in prayer and give thanks and remember that there's only one thing I really need. There's only one thing
That's
I
right.
really want, and that is to be in the presence of God.
Yep. Yeah. I think that changes everything. I mean,
Yeah.
it kind of reframes uh, the whole um, getting my needs met. Well, my needs are met through the person
Hmm.
of God Himself. That there's just it just changes everything, just all is well. I mean, it's like this person and is they've made all these wonderful statements and now they're about to pray. They're about to
Yeah.
say, hear me when I but they already know that everything is going to be okay. But now in the context of this wonderful trusting grace faith relationship with the God of Israel, now I lay down my burdens before him and I
Hmm.
have full confidence that he's going to take care of them.
Yeah.
Everything's so, in fact, I'm so confident that it's already happened.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because I say that it's already happened. If you go back up there to verse 2, where the New RSV translates, they shall stumble. You can translate that with the past tense.
Yeah.
It's like
They
uh,
did stumble.
they
Hmm.
have stumbled
Hmm.
already. So it's like, okay, they have stumbled. They surrounded me and they fell.
Right.
They fell. But here you have this statement of confidence. I'm crying to you again, like the the slaves in Egypt. We mentioned that a lot, but that's this cry language comes from Exodus 1
Hmm.
and 2, and it's like, hear my cry. But God is going to hear my cry because
Yeah.
where am I? I'm in the presence of the
Yeah.
Lord.
So you're
I
you're
have a
moving us.
personal audience.
Yeah, you're moving
Go
us
ahead.
into the second half of the psalm, the
Yeah,
petition. So we have
yeah,
this, okay, I'm in the presence of God. I'm here in the temple. I'm inquiring. I'm seeking. Okay, now what am I saying? What is
that's
it
right.
that's on
What am
my
I
heart?
saying?
What am I going to ask God, or what am I going to say to God? And that's what we get in verses 7 to 12. We basically get, okay, I've come, I'm here, this is where I want to be. This is what will deal with my fears. This is what will settle my heart. But I got to tell you, God, you know, I need some help. And
That's
that's
right.
where verses 7 and following, we get these series of petitions like hear, be
Yeah,
gracious, answer. Those are all imperatives in Hebrew. So I'm
yeah.
addressing God. All right, God, I'm here. I'm here to seek you. I'm here to receive answers, inquire of you. Now answer me. Uh,
And-
I am
Yep.
yours. So
Yep.
deal with me, please, God.
Yeah.
Right.
Be gracious to me and answer me. And he
Mhm.
knows it's going to happen. And what I find interesting there in verse 8 is he says, you have uh, all of a sudden there's the heart is speaking, and the psalmist says, "My heart spoke to me." And sometimes we get a little
Mhm.
skeptical about that kind of thing. Don't listen to your heart. The heart is more deceitful than all things, and Scripture does say that. But here it is somehow there is a prompting from inside this Israelite that says, "Come," my heart says,
Mhm.
seek his face. We are not always deceived, especially if we have I think um learned to pray and um bury ourselves in the word in the community that and I mean I believe anyway that ultimately when it says that come my heart says seek his that's really a prompting from God himself inside this
Right.
psalmist.
Yeah.
God is speaking to this psalmist, and it's because this psalmist has a heart that is seeking, wants to be with God. And so God does speak, and we pay attention. I'm going to be obedient to what's speaking in my life, which is actually the voice of God. The voice of
Yeah.
God says, seek me.
Right.
I'm the one who's going to make everything okay in your life. Now seek me. And now it says, I'm obedient. Your face, Lord, do I seek. I will respond. And notice how it says, my heart said to do this. But now the psalmist says, Lord, the psalmist recognizes that this prompting is in fact divine. It comes from the Lord, your face do I seek.
Hmm.
And anyway, that's how I
Actually
read that.
addresses God.
Yes,
Here's the seek his face. Yes, Lord, I will seek your face. So I think
absolutely.
that's a heart that's been formed. It's been formed by the story. It's been formed by the community. It's been formed by intimacy with God. It's been formed by the habit of being in the presence of God over and over. And so it becomes almost like a theological intuition.
Yes.
It's something that arises out of who we are. We are people who seek the Lord. We are people who trust in the Lord. And so our hearts, we would hope that our hearts have been so formed that God can speak through them and remind us. My heart will say, "Seek His face." Oh yeah, I got to remember. I got to remember
Yeah,
who I am, and God is going to remind me of who I am. And how do
that's
I
right.
respond to that? Do I, in the
Yeah,
midst of fear, do I seek His face, or in the midst of fear, do I go hide in a corner and shiver, and be
yeah.
afraid of everything in the world? Yeah.
Yeah, I compare it sometimes to like Jesus says, "My sheep will know my voice." There's something about that's not just the words of a paper. In the old song,
Right.
"Beyond the Sacred Page," I see. We have that, and sometimes don't necessarily believe it. But I think the psalmist again, who didn't have a Bible carrying around, saying, "Okay, I have been shaped by this wonderful story of the the God of Israel who rescues the slaves, who is on our side, and I know this. My 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 heart has spoken."
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
prompted by, I think, the Spirit of God, the
Yeah.
presence of God. The presence of God is operating, and I equate the presence of God with actually the presence of the Spirit. I
Hmm.
think there's hard to
Yeah.
split those apart.
The Spirit
And
dwells in us, and yeah, exactly.
yeah,
So I think, we have this, the heart says, yes, I will. And then it's kind of, okay, I believe this, but don't hide your face from me. you know, uh, don't go away.
that's right. That's right.
I need you here. But you've mentioned before how the word face here is used three times. I mean, this is real emphatic language.
It is.
Face, 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 which is about, as you've said before, presence. It's about
Right.
seeing God face to face in a way. Now,
That's
this
right.
is not kind of in that literal way, but it is in an intimate way. It is.
That's right.
I mean, we will see the face of God in the new heaven and new earth, Revelation 22. But here it's more about that intimacy and relational nature of God that connects with us so that we see his face and we feel the presence of God. And that's where kind of the experience of God needs to come back into our language and to feel God's presence, to feel
That's
God's
right.
love for us.
Yeah. And I think ultimately, in the canonical story, two things about this. Moses wanted to see God, and God said, "You can't see my face" in Exodus 33, but God does make his glory go by him, and he shelters him in the crag of the rock there and covers him with his hand. But God does, I think, ultimately answer this prayer even before the new heavens and new earth. He has given
Yeah,
us
sure.
his face in Jesus in the incarnation. As
Hmm.
when you see me, you've seen the Father. This is what Jesus says in the Gospel of John, anyway. So he's like, yes, I do want this kind of intimacy. And the psalmist, even though God said to Moses, "You can't see my face," the psalmist still says, "That's what I want to see." And again, this is just wonderful because they know that's what ultimately that's where where safety.
Yeah,
That's the kind of thing Adam had. That's the kind of thing Eve had. They walk in the presence of the Lord in the garden, and that's where I want to be. That's what I want.
yeah,
I want to have what we in our human history and story have messed up. But that I want to dwell in the house of the Lord. I want to gaze on His beauty. I want to look at Him. I want to walk with Him. I want to talk with Him. I want to live with Him. That's
yeah.
what I
You're
want.
pointing out. I mean,
So
the notion of presence is has a thread throughout the whole story. The presence
exactly.
of God with Adam and Eve in the garden. That's a kind of a face to face, and then we're going to have that in the new garden, right? In the new
That's right.
Jerusalem, in the new heaven and new earth, we'll have that kind of face to face. But along the way, God has always shown His face in certain ways,
Right.
not in that full sense that we had in the garden and in the new garden, but in ways in which we can experience God's face. The
That's right.
psalmist experiences it. The disciples experienced it in seeing the actual face of Jesus. When they
Right.
saw Jesus, they saw the Father, and we experience it through the presence of the Spirit. That we have that intimacy with God. But one day we will see face to face, and we will
We
see
will.
it in fullness.
Mm.
But we don't want to diminish the reality of our experience of God simply because it's not like what it will be
Right.
ultimately. It's still real and it's still intimate and
Oh,
it's still
absolutely.
formative. Yeah.
No, I want to stress that the Israelite
They
have
saw the
a
face of God. Yeah.
genuine experience of God
Right. Yeah.
here. This is something that many Christians don't even experience for whatever reason. These ancient Israelites have a genuine intimacy, a craving.
Mm.
I want to
Yeah.
call it, you a husband and wife get married, and one of them goes away for a little while. And I speak as a single man now, but I was married once, and it's like, okay, so, and it's like I had it, and I want that back. And that was a real, genuine experience. And these Israelites, they have that. I, this is not just a figment of the imagination. They are experiencing God
Hmm.
in a powerful way.
And that's why they don't want it to be taken away.
That's
Right?
right.
Don't hide yourself from me. Don't
That's right.
turn from your servant. You have been my help. Don't cast me off. Don't forsake me. I,
Yeah,
I need this presence because this is the only real stability in my life. This is the
that's
only
right.
real confidence that I have. So don't
Yep.
take it away from me. And my confidence is that even the most intimate relationship that I have in my life, my mother and my father, who
Right.
are supposed to be the caregivers in my life and the protectors in my life, that
Yeah.
and they would love me no matter what, even if
That's
they
right.
forsake me. I know
That's
you
right.
won't. So as
That's
he
right.
as the psalmist prays, don't hide your face from me. He is also expressing a confidence, and I know you won't. Right?
Yep.
You
That's
won't.
right.
You
And
won't
I know
forsake
you
me.
won't.
I know you
That's
won't.
right. Yeah.
But I need to
And
learn
that,
something. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Bobby.
oh, no, 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 no. Didn't mean to cut you off there. That's where, the psalmist realizes being there in the presence of the Lord that they need something. That's when they take up that petition. Teach
Hmm.
me
Right.
your way.
We need
You
to
know,
learn something while we're in the
that's right.
presence of the Lord. It's not
That's
just
right. We need
we
to
go into the
learn.
presence and okay, it's all over, it's done. No more. We're good. But
Yeah,
no, in this presence, don't forsake me, but teach me.
that's right.
Lead me on teach and lead. I want to be
Teach and lead.
instructed from the Torah. Right? I want to know the will. I want to know what the direct of God is, the way of God is. I want to know the way, and I need you to lead me on that way. It's kind of like at
Yeah,
Sinai, right? Here's the
exactly.
law, right? Here's the Torah, and then God in the pillar of cloud and fire leads them in the wilderness. That's kind of
Yeah,
he's I think maybe he's envisioning that sort of reality that's still going on. I need in the presence of God, I need you to teach me and I need you to lead me. I can't do this on my own.
that's right. And that's a wonderful prayer because it shows up in lots of different places in the song, but especially Psalm 119, where it's
Hmm.
constantly saying, teach me, teach me, teach me, open up my eyes so I see wonderful things in your law. I mean, that this is where it's at, and there's no self sufficiency here. I got everything figured out, or precision obedience kind of thing. I need the personal God in the personal presence of God to become my personal teacher in the way that I need to go. Even we already have this revealed will. Again, this kind of reminds me again, I'm just talking off the top of my head, Ephesians 1. Paul says, I pray that God will give you a spirit of wisdom and revelation, so that you will know him, so that you will do. They already got the Torah, they
To
already got the
to
epistles, but
enlighten
they
our
need
eyes,
something.
right?
That's right, to
Yeah.
enlighten our eyes and our hearts, is like I need this. And that's what this kind of prayer is that Yahweh, this personal presence of Yahweh, illuminates us, guides us, leads us, instructs us in a path, because he says, of my enemies.
Hmm.
I need to um the enemies are still there. The enemies haven't gone away, and I need to choose the right path to go on. And that's where God's going to come in. He's going to teach me, and
Hmm.
he's going to lead me, as you
Yeah.
said. Just both very active, involved in this person's life. So
Yeah. Think about how those enemies trying to distort, trying to deceive. Now, we are formed by our culture. There are a lot of cultural dimensions of the world that are trying to form us in different ways. We get more formed by, what is it, Jamie Smith says? We're more formed by the Mall of America than we are by the assembly of God, right?
I'm sure
And
that.
so we have a lot of adversaries out there. There's a lot of influences that are trying to shape us and mold us into a particular way of living or a particular way of thinking about ourselves. But we want God to teach us and we want God to lead
That's right.
us. We don't want those adversaries to have the input to say, you're not worth anything. You're a piece of dirt. That's what somebody would want to say to us. That's what our adversaries want to say to us. And we said, no, no. I'm one of God's people and
Yeah,
he is the light of my life and the salvation of my world. And I want the God to teach me and lead me
that's right.
over in contrast to these adversaries. And so we
Yep.
end up with kind of a confidence here, Bobby, in verse 13.
Yep.
Right? This is what I believe.
That's
Okay. I mean, there's a lot of junk out there. I get that. And there's a lot, even if my mother and father forsake me, the world can crash.
yep.
But here's what I believe
Yep.
that I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living.
Yep.
And that's
Yeah.
quite
It
a,
is.
I mean, that's quite a statement of trust that as the world is crashing down around us, and both you and I have been through some very traumatic experiences in our lives, and we've been at the bottom of the pit. And yet there's an expression of confidence there that says, I may be sitting at the bottom of the pit, but I'm in the presence of God. And
That's
I
right.
will experience the goodness of God even while I still live. I don't have to die to do that. I can
That's
experience
right.
the goodness of God right now.
That's right. Yeah, I've come to give them life and life abundantly, Jesus said. And I think this is that kind of thing. I will, and it is an emphatic statement, I will see this in the land of the living.
Hmm.
Um, this is not something that's a reward, the opiate of the masses, as Karl
Yeah.
Marx would say about religion. This is God is going to take care of me in while I'm still alive. Now, I don't know what all that looks like, and neither does anybody else, but this person believes I'm going to see the goodness of Yahweh. I'm going to see the goodness. And that is such a powerful statement. I find it moving. And that's why, it ends with, because he doesn't, there's no timeline. I don't know exactly when that's going to be. And he says, wait for the Lord, wait for the Lord.
Hmm.
And,
And while
but
you
in,
wait, you got to be courageous and strong.
that's right, be
You got to
strong and
rest in the
courageous.
Lord and find your courage there.
Um,
Don't be afraid, right? You don't need to be afraid. You can have courage and live life.
Yeah. That the phrase occurs in Psalm 130, where it's in parallel with the watchman on the wall, waiting, like a watchman on the wall. And you're with the watchman on the wall, and I think this is the kind of idea that's going on here. The watchman is looking for the morning, the first sign of daybreak. It's this expectant. I know it's coming. the earth is turning, so the sun is going to come up. I just don't know exactly the moment the sun is going to come above the horizon, but I know it's coming. So I'm looking, and I'm waiting. And the same thing is here, I think. This person is saying, I'm waiting. It's already on its way. Deliverance. He is my light. The light's going to come above the horizon. He is my salvation. That's, again, a phrase that comes from Exodus 15. Yahweh has become our salvation in 15:2. He delivered us from God is going to come. He is. I'm already, in fact, I'm already in his presence. This is all I need. So everything's good. It's a good one. I like this psalm. So you
It's what
muted
gives us
yourself.
courage. It's what gives us strength, right? That
Yes, yes.
we know we're in the presence of God and we know that God is our deliverer, that God is our salvation. We can wait and we
Yep.
will see the goodness of God. God's goodness will shine even in the darkness. We
Yeah.
have to wait and watch for it, right?
Yeah. And knowing that, waiting when you don't know that there's help on the way is completely different than waiting when you know help is on the way.
That's a
And
good point.
those are two radically different ideas.
Yeah.
And hey, God's already here. He's taking care of it. He's my salvation.
And
So,
that's where our strength comes from, right?
absolutely.
Well, thanks, Bobby. It's been a good discussion. This is a wonderful psalm. It's a beautiful psalm.
It
It's
is.
impacted a lot of people over the centuries, and it's something we can return to again and again to
Absolutely.
dispel fear, to remember what's really important. Remember the one thing that
Right.
we really want to behold the beauty of the Lord in God's house.
That's right.
May the grace of our Lord Jesus
And
Christ and the love of God and the communion of the Holy Spirit be with us all. Amen.
amen.